Shalom Aleichem Internet, my name is Rabbi Cedric Gazinski, and here is the weekly TorahByte. This week's Torah portion is Parsha Tisa, and in it we relate perhaps what is one of the most well-known stories of Jewish history, but it's also simultaneously one of the least understood. What I'm referring to is the story of the golden calf. 40 days after the Jewish people heard directly from God's mouth, "Thou shalt not have any other gods besides for me," they make an idol. What makes this particularly difficult to understand is the fact that not only did they hear this from God himself, but they accepted the entirety of Torah and the faith that comes with it, with an amazing testament of faith when they said, "Na'aseh v'nishma," we will accept, even before we understand. And this comes on the heel of them witnessing the great miraculous splitting of the sea and the miracles that happened in Egypt. So these people had front row seats to God himself. And then God turned to them and said directly to them, "Thou shalt not have any other gods." And then they go, and 40 days later, a little over a month, and they make a golden calf. So this story, it begs further analysis. But we'll back up a minute and first look at the beginning of the Torah portion. The Torah portion does not open with this story. Rather, the Torah portion actually opens with the aftermath of the story, and in a sense, what it is that God prescribed as atonement for this horrific and terrible event. And then only later we say what this event was. So what is it? What has the power to atone for such a horrible act that the Jewish people did, in such a horrific moment, such a horrible, horrible sin that they did? The answer is a half-shekel coin. A half-shekel coin. That's like somebody committing the most heinous crime and being told that his fine is 50 cents. How does a half-shekel coin atone for the greatest sin that the Jewish people had ever committed? So we have two questions on the table. How do you go from receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai, hearing directly from the words from the mouth of God himself, "You shall have no other gods," 40 days later create an idol and say, "This is your God, O Israel"? And also, how after committing such a horrific sin does a half-shekel coin atone for it? The answer has to do with the fact that we have to appreciate that while it's easy to be Monday morning quarterbacks or armchair quarterbacks and look and say, "Oh, that was horrible what they did. How could they?" The state in which the people were at that moment, they counted 40 days as Moshe had told them, and says he was going to once again descend from the mountain. They count the 40 days, they get the count off, and Moshe is not there. Moshe is not there. The man who took them out of Egypt, upon who they put their entire trust, to take them into a desert without food and drink or anything, to cross them through a sea without a bridge or anything like that. And he's gone now. He's gone now. Now they're in the desert with a mandate from God to follow all these commandments without anybody in their mind to help them, to guide them and to clarify for them how this is supposed to be done. The sheep now have no shepherd. And this throws them into a frenzy. They don't know what to do at this moment. They haven't yet lost their faith. But this is where, as the Medrash tells us, the Satan got involved a little bit. You see, when Moshe went up onto the mountain to speak to God, he did not stop at the peak of the mountain. He continued climbing into heaven. One thing he left behind as he climbed into heaven was his physical body. Because physical bodies don't enter into spiritual heaven. And so he left his body kind of there on the side, checked it in at the coat check, and entered into heaven, soul without a body. In the meantime, the Satan tells the Jewish people that Moshe, the person that you're waiting for, the reason he hasn't come back is because he's dead. He's gone. He's done. End of the story. You're not getting him back. And the Jewish people say, "Can't be. Moshe promised us he's going to be back. He's going to be back. We have full faith and trust in Moshe Rabbeinu." At which the Satan borrows the body that was left at the Kochek, Moshe's body that he was going to come back for, and displays it, this lifeless body, in front of the Jewish people and say, "Well, here is that Moshe. He's dead. He's gone." And at that point, the Jewish people really become concerned, scared. They're alone. They're alone. They're in the desert. They have a command from God, but they're alone. That their proxy, their liaison between them and God, the God that they still believed in and were still ready to follow, but now the connection is gone. The phone, the network has been disconnected. And they didn't know what to do with this feeling of absolute aloneness that they now all of a sudden had. So originally, when they were making the golden calf, as we find in many of the commentaries, and very clearly hinted out to in the words of the actual text, that what they were originally building with the golden calf was not a stand-in for God, but actually a stand-in for Moshe. Something to be a physical gateway for God's command, as, by the way, later the cherubim, the cherubs on the Ark of the Covenant acted. It was just a physical gateway for God's word. They're not God. They're not meant to be a proxy for God, but they're meant to act as a physical portal through which God's words can enter into our world. And up until that point, Moshe was a living, breathing manifestation of that portal, but now Moshe's gone. They need something else. It was only later, once the ball started rolling, that they later said, you know what, this is God. Because we can see it, we can feel it, and they reverted back to pagan ideas that if we can feel it and we can touch it, we can call it God and it's all fine. But where did the problem start? The problem started with this great sense of loneliness. The fact that they were all alone. They were cut off from any source of help and guidance and clarification. That without Moshe, their relationship with God was disconnected. That was their mistake. The remedy for that is the half-shekel coin. This wasn't 50 cents, it was a $50. It was not 50 agurot, or whatever it is, the currency back then under the shekel was. It was a half shekel. The difference is 50 agurot would be 50 full measures of currency. A half shekel is a half measure. The understanding is that you are never alone. That you only hold, at any given point, half the equation, and the other half is God. You always have that other half. You're never completely alone, because you always have a second half at your side. Moshe is not the individual that stands between you and God. Moshe is the individual that helps you connect directly with God, helps you be aware of your own personal connection with God. That is the difference between the Jewish understanding of Moshe and other religions that have the belief of a man standing in between us and God. You and every single one of you have a direct connection with God. You are never alone. And even when it appears that Moshe is off the scene, it doesn't mean that God is not with you. And that's the message of the half-shekel coin. And that is the message that we take as we go forward. Sometimes we see the leader, sometimes we see the source of divine inspiration around us, and sometimes we need to be our own source of divine inspiration. We need to confidently walk knowing that God is at our side, no matter what the situation is, and no matter how lonely we might otherwise feel. To know that we're half the coin, and God is the second half. Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful week.